Firstly, thank you so much for everybody for accepting to do this webinar. I know it takes us back a little bit to the COVID time, so I know that it works. And when I sent out this invitation to people, there's a lot of you that said, "Why are you doing a webinar?" And I felt like because we're used to it, and it's very efficient, and it allows others who are not in Delhi to participate. So thank you for that. It was a very important topic that the genesis for even doing this sort of discussion was that three of them. There are a number of people who had sent me their thoughts, their comments, their views, and congratulations, especially on the Delhi EV policy. So I felt it would be it would be appropriate of us in the ecosystem to at least have something like this where others could come and share their views and also participate to the extent possible. So I reached out to, of course, my friends at WRI, and I asked Pavan, saying this is completely up your alley, and it's so timely because we're in the middle of perhaps one of the most ambitious policies I've seen in the country. And I'm just coming out of an event this morning on buses, and many of my colleagues who are perhaps on this call or was also there. I know Kunalji was also there. We're the second largest bus market in the country. We hit lots of indicators when it comes to the sale of two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Internationally, people are watching. We're quite critical to ourselves, as it should be. But as a nation, we have moved so fast in the last few years that I definitely want to use this opportunity to keep the ecosystem alive and bring its best people to the table here and the best brains. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Mahua. Before we get into the details, in the interest of time, why don't I, Alisha, if you want to do a fireside chat, or if Kunal wants to come in and speak up, why don't we do that? And then actually, I was
Yeah,
planning to set the context, but I'll set
yeah.
the context after this session. So over to you, Alisha. Thank you.
All right, so we have 10 minutes and a lot to pack in, Kunal. I won't waste time introducing you. I think everyone on this call would know you very well. You have a ringside view to shaping the most important policies around clean mobility. Let me start by asking you about the CAFE emissions regime that will start anew from 2027. A lot of spotlight has been on that. How do you view the latest CAFE rules will impact the broader transition to clean mobility?
Thank you so much, Alisha. Thank you so much, Mahua and Pawanji. Thank you so much for this invitation. Well, yes, I think I might just be able to sort of stay a little longer until 4:30, in the interest of time and also in the interest of the agenda that we have at hand. Very important one for sure. Alisha, to quickly sort of glance upon CAFE, yes, it is going to serve as a major incentive for the industry to sort of make a drastic shift towards the way they are sort of launching their own products. Cafe serves as a fundamental tool to ensure that the fuel basket that the automakers are currently offering to the consumers in India is diversified like never before. The incentive structure itself of the regulation is such that puts automakers at a natural disadvantage if they're sort of going ahead with only one fuel per se. It is primarily aimed at ensuring that fuel efficiency is improved. And what are the two metrics that we are currently looking at? It is lightweighting, number one, and number two, ensuring that, as I said, the fuels are alternate. The fuels are something that are substitute to the current dependence on crude oil import and crude oil as a primary source of energy for India's transportation ecosystems. What makes cafe norms this time much more interesting also is the way the incentive structures have been framed as well. Because the lens that the government is trying to see, the different fuels is on a complete life cycle and on a complete well-to-wheel basis. This is something that we are trying to sort of address because we also want, you know, fuels that are driven by market economies to sort of take over and provide consumers with a wide set of options, so that they could decide the right amount of fuel for the right amount of application for themselves. And that is going to bring a major shift in the supply of commodities in the Indian auto sector. So I think, to sum it up, great regulation is in making. We can't wait to notify it as soon as the Power Ministry ends the consultation, sends it out to our ministry, and then we finally notify that as a part of rules. But I think these past a year and a half has been very interesting for the regulators as well, to see how the industry or how the ecosystem in general is also reacting to the kind of incentive structures that are being offered into the market. So a great learning experience for me personally as well. So I mean, yeah, can't wait for the regulation to be rolled out.
We like seeing that enthusiasm and actually putting regulations out quickly. But obviously, in the backdrop of the Iran war, this conversation sort of needs to be amplified. One realizes that depending, leaning into much into one fuel type can sort of lead to all sorts of issues. But in that backdrop, while you were doing these consultations with the industry, there was quite a split that emerged, right? Which was, do we go the full electrification way, which had been the anticipation for a long time, and we saw OEMs invest very heavily into that. But on the other end, there was also some sort of call for a bit more of a transition phase, which will allow to sort of address inadequacies in charging infrastructure, and also sort of not force, so to speak, one pathway into electrification. And now, of course, there's hybrids, there is fuel cells, there is flex fuel EVs that you have sort of addressed in the new regime. So where does the ministry really sit on this split currently, and how do you sort of bring the industry together with these various interests they have?
Well, to sort of sum it up, I think it is the vision is very simple. It is market-driven fuel economy is something that we are looking at. Need-based fuel economy is something that we're looking at. We are not willing to be sort of very stringent on one pathway as the pathway to cleaner future. Of course, electric vehicles have shown great potential in terms of uptake, in terms of fuel economy, in terms of a total cost of ownership. But as you rightly pointed out, there are still apprehensions among certain sections of the society to be sort of, for example, just to put it into context, I mean, look at two-wheelers, look at three-wheelers. I mean, fantastic numbers for uptake of EVs. But when it comes to passenger vehicles, there's still the cost of lithium per kilowatt hour is something that again needs to be looked at in terms of the total cost of ownership perspective. But from a regulatory standpoint, the government is very clear that it would not essentially want to put all of their eggs in one fuels basket, and essentially keeping in the view of national energy security, in view of essentially being able to save imports, and also being able to diversify the strengths of agriculture into energy and the fuel sector. So basically, this is something that the minister also keeps repeating. Maybe he's repeated this zillion times, but the vision statement that he always says is import substitute, cost effective, indigenous, and pollution free. So anything and everything that falls into that ambit, we are willing to support it. Of course, EV is a front runner, but so are many other fuels that can also be deployed with a great amount of benefits on a well-to-wheel basis as well.
I want to quickly bring up a comment that Dr. Virender has left, which says that from a CAQM perspective, the air pollution impact is also something to keep in mind, and not just carbon emissions. So that is one thing, and Dr. You're welcome to join the conversation if you'd like. But how do you address that? That is one. And secondly, any apprehension that may address from the industry that it's perhaps likely going to derail investments into pure EVs then, or perhaps confuse, which direction the government might be taking. So how do you sort of square that?
I wouldn't use the word confuse. I think the word that we're looking is at diversify. I mean, as I just mentioned, CAFE is an instrument that is requiring automakers to diversify the basket and not sort of be stringent upon only one fuel type. But at the same point of time, notwithstanding the benefits of each and every fuel in a particular kind of an application. For example, hydrogen. Hydrogen is something that heavy duty and long distance freight applications, we can have immense gains that could be realized. I mean, which is also why we are also running the first ever pilot of hydrogen trucks in India. Heavy duty trucking is something that and heavy duty clean trucking and freights is something that we are extremely passionate about. That pilot and the data points that we are going to get from that pilot over the next 3 years are going to be phenomenal, because that is going to essentially help us address end-to-end on an end-to-end basis on the complete life cycle of hydrogen as a fuel, be it in terms of storage, compression, transportation, and even refueling, which is the elephant in the room, hydrogen refueling stations. And one great outcome of this pilot is that 9 hydrogen refueling stations would be set up in the time to come, in the next 2 to 3 years, across 10 routes in India, which would essentially end dependence on the 2 HRSs that are currently active, one in Faridabad and second in Vadodara, and both of them in IOCL refineries. That is something that we are extremely passionate about in terms of seeing how we could ensure that more and more such refueling stations come up and end the dependence of hydrogen vehicles being carried upon on trailers, essentially to fill them up in a refueling station. So that is something that we are trying to change using such pilots. But yes, hydrogen is just an example. Similarly, we are extremely passionate about bio-CNG. We are extremely passionate about ethanol as well as a fuel pathway. As you rightly mentioned, flex fuel strong hybrid. The combination of flex and strong hybrid is essentially giving a great sort of economics that a consumer could essentially want, especially given the current fluctuations that are emerging out of the Iran war at this point of time. I think, which is why, as I said, if I could maybe sum up the agenda for fuels right now, we're looking at a 5-point agenda. We are essentially looking at fuels that are clean, that are helping us to save imports and reduce pollution. We are looking at efficient transportation systems that ensure that they're timely and are also providing last mile connectivity. We are looking at safe vehicles, essentially no compromise. The minister made a big announcement on how we are trying to change the safety scenario of buses and the bus codes in India. That is something that one must actually watch out for, because especially given that we are looking at around 1.5 lakh EV buses that are to offer in the next year and a half, that the government would be procuring via multiple of its different schemes. Safety of buses is something that needs to be addressed, especially given after the recent unfortunate accidents and incidences that have happened in the last 6 months. We've lost close to 120 people, and many of them are injured. We do not want to sort of lose the confidence of the common public onto the bus transportation, which is still the single largest and the most efficient way of transporting human beings in this country, and that is going to be a game changing. Both these schemes, be it e-bus seva, be it e-drive, both of them are going to be phenomenal in terms of seeing how people are going to be traveling in a cleaner and a smarter way of travel. Accessibility, convenience. We are hell bent on ensuring that the buses are also accessible, Divyangjan friendly. That is something that was a big loophole in the recent procurements that was being done by multiple government agencies. Low floor buses is something that was discounted. Maybe it was a foresight or something, but that is something that we have recently rectified now. And at the end of it, low capital cost. We have to look at the per capita income of our country and have to give solutions that are offering low capital cost solutions and an effective alternative to metro rail. I mean, look at metro rail projects across the country. I mean, the high capital cost and the cash flows are essentially not allowing these projects to be realizing the amount of profits that they should realize, which is why buses clean, efficient, safe, accessible, and low capital cost. I think these are the roughly 5-point agenda that we are looking at in terms of public transportation in India. And yes, EV buses is the future, without a doubt.
Interesting. I'm sure Mahua is thrilled to hear that, and so are many others. But while buses and two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and of course, two-wheelers and three-wheelers particularly, the success is unqualified there. And buses, we're seeing many of them on the roads. The one sector which has an outsized impact on pollution, and perhaps is the slowest as of now to transition to clean fuels, is trucks. Hydrogen is one solution that you have mentioned the government is keen to develop. What is the longer-term roadmap that you see towards transitioning trucks to, and particularly long haul heavy duty trucking towards cleaner fuels?
I think long haul heavy duty trucking requires solutions such as battery swapping, and we've seen in recent past how swapping of batteries has essentially, and also battery as a service, these two principles have essentially helped us to sort of realize an efficient way to sort of ensure that the energy that is required to fuel those trucks for long distance trucking is still available, until and unless we get to a situation where the network of the charging infrastructure reaches where it should actually be. So I think one should actually sort of watch out for these startups. I mean, numerous startups are actually doing great work in this area in battery as a service, and I think that can serve as a great segue into ensuring that heavy duty trucking in electric fuels is something that that becomes successful.
Okay. If you have to identify one big bottleneck right now that that you see is hindering wider adoption of electric vehicles, what would that be, and what are the sort of policy changes that could come about today or are being thought of that addresses that?
Well, the Prime Minister always mentions about how the government and different government departments often work in silos. So I wouldn't say that there's one such lever that would essentially, enable the kind of uptake that we would ideally want in terms of EV uptakes. But it is a combination of charging infrastructure plus mindset plus economics plus cost of lithium. All of these things combined together could actually work out. But I mean, had absence of policy been an issue, I mean, we would not have seen the amount of uptake that two-wheelers and three-wheelers saw. Because people realized economics, because people realized the total cost of ownership vis-a-vis their daily run, their daily commute, vis-a-vis their daily requirement of carrying an X amount of payload from point A to point B, vis-a-vis their ability to pay for fuels every month. I mean, the economics simply made sense. Similarly, the moment we have a sort of a parallel in other categories of vehicles and categories of services in the transport sector, I think we immediately start to see those results. I mean, results in passenger vehicles are steady but slow. Yes, they can be much more faster, and I think cafe would definitely be a great driver, because it also depends on what kind of supply we are looking at. It's just like a kid entering into a candy shop. When someone goes into a showroom and the kind of fuels that are at display vis-a-vis the economics, I think the consumer is also smart enough to make that decision for themselves. So I think we're not far away from that scenario, maybe a year or two, and we'd be there where every second vehicle that would be bought would be an EV because of the economics primarily.
Well, thank you very much for that, Kunal. In the interest of your time as well, let me hand the panel. Let me hand the floor back to Mahua or Pawan.
Well, thank you so much, Alisha, Mahua ji, Pawan ji. Thank you so much. It was great. I have an impending meeting. I would have loved to be a part of this panel and proceed ahead with the discussions, but I'm sure I'm going to sort of watch the session later this evening and get back to you with feedback.
Thank you. Thanks very much, and really appreciate, Kunal, that you're able to take this time out and give us a little view of what's going on there. I think everybody appreciates. Thank you very much, and I know you have to run. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Alisha, how are you doing? Yeah, let's
Mahush,
go.
we had scheduled Dr. Ravindra Mehta to come
Yes,
and
yes.
share.
So I
So,
think maybe get on with the rest of the panel and we start with Dr. Mehta. Should we do that, Pawan? Okay, okay. Maybe I'll ask the panelists to just 30 seconds introduce yourselves. Of course, I know all of you, but in the interest of the audience, maybe should we go with Alicia? You're going to stay with us, right?
I might just have to drop off at some point,
Okay,
Mawa. I leave it in
okay,
your very able hands.
okay,
Do not
okay. So
disturb
just
the
as
later.
for introduction for others, Alicia covers the auto sector, is a very senior journalist at Bloomberg. I've known her for a very long time. And I was very pleased and happy that she was able to take the time out to be at this event. I know today is an important day for you, so whenever you do need to duck out, please feel free. Maybe Dr. Mehta, we'll ask you for 30 seconds. Since I can't see everyone on my strip,
Sure.
ask for a quick
I'm
introduction.
I'm a respiratory and ICU physician. We have our own center called Vayu Chest and Sleep Specialists, and our corporate arm is Apollo Hospitals. I've been in the space for around 25 years between US and India.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Virendraji, Dr. Sharma, do we have? Virendraji, आप हैं? Are you here, Dr. Sharma? He must have just stepped out. He is member technical at CAQM, that's the Council on Air Quality Management. Let's go to Shravan. 30
Hi.
seconds.
Yeah, good evening, all. Thank you, Moma. I am Shravan Engineer. I lead the EV vertical at Epic India. And like just a little nugget, I was also there at the department when the first policy was being implemented. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Danesh?
So myself, Dhanesh Sisodia. I'm working in automobile industry last 15 years. So especially in a passenger car mobility and commercial mobility. So we are working towards the electrification in Indian trucking. So that's
Thank
about
you.
myself.
And Achal, are you there?
Hi, I'm Anshul.
Okay,
I'm the CEO of PMI. PMI is in leading electric bus OEM in the country.
thanks, Achal. Thanks for having us. So let's start. Just to go back, the context also for doing this event, and I know I've had this conversation with many of you, with Achal for sure, with Pavan for sure. I live in Delhi, as do many of you on this call. We must now start to put a little bit of a society lens on our policies. A lot of my time has been spent thinking about deployment finance and how to just get her on the road and dealing with all the issues that come in the way. But I would like to not forget why we have these policies from time to time. And so to that extent, to the extent that it's pollution and hits our medical systems immediately, I'm very, very honored, Dr. Mehta, that you are able to take a bit of time out. So maybe we start with you because you're the person that will put a little bit of purpose into why we do what we do and
Sure.
what you're seeing at your end.
Should I share my
Uh,
screen?
Yes, please.
Usual question, visible?
Yes. To me, yes.
Okay, excellent. So I think in the 10 minutes given to me, my job is usually when I talk of pollution is fear and petrification. So that's what our job is because the way we've reached here, it's actually this whole thing reminds you of the fact that humanity as a whole in its hunt for progress and prosperity may actually overstep greed to the point of self-detriment. The sad part is a lot of people will suffer because humanity as a whole is not getting its act into shape. And I'm sure that all your efforts are in that direction to try and make a difference. And so the introduction needs no further explanation. We know that things are horrible. The numbers always speak for themselves. Vehicular traffic contributes to 30% of urban air pollution, and urban is where we all are at this point. And then, of course, the constituents of that are not well defined because there's a unusual mixture happening, data for which has been garnered but not particularly talked about or looked at exhaustively. But we know the consequences. Fast forward, it's leading to a ton of diseases. COPD, for those who are not in the medical space, is basically chronic bronchitis and emphysema. And it's the top three in terms of morbidity and death worldwide right now. And India was supposed to be lucky because we didn't have COPD because of smoking as much, but now we have a lot of COPD related to add-on effect of pollution. And since the lung is not isolated, it ultimately, we talk of organs for simplicity of understanding in medicine and for people to look at us differently. But inflammation in one part of the body affects the whole body, and that's why stroke, heart disease, and so many other consequences, including diabetes and dementia, which I've not added over there. Scale of the crisis is tremendous. There's a large number of deaths attributed, and this is pretty much fresh off the press when you look at the fact that papers take a long time to generate. This came in multiple forums. The Lancet has been one of them, and the Lancet particularly likes to look at India and give us all of our horrific news we have realized. Turns out that the we are not breathing healthy air at all, and it is now turning to be a leading risk factor for global death. India being obviously a leader. We're leaders in asthma incidents right now. We're leaders in tuberculosis. Maybe Africa is a close second or maybe a little ahead, but there. And the third is obviously now it's coming down to all these diabetes and NCDs. A good deal of it which should be related, a good deal of which will be related to pollution. Now, pollution is of two types. Outdoor is what we know about, and this is well known to everybody. The agriculture waste and biomass burning is what you guys see in Delhi when they talk of the fact it's coming from Punjab and so on. And the construction dust took an all-time high when we decided to make our lovely cities into concrete jungles. Indoor air pollution is a big thing, maybe less in the urban well-off, but a lot of the other people who are exempted from maybe urban pollution are actually polluting their own homes with what we call biomass fuel. And unfortunately, it's like turning the wheel around 360 degrees with this nascent LPG thing. People are going back to biomass fuel. So it's a real detriment, and the powers that be who do these things in the countries who rule us have not even factored in the fact that this is going to be a pretty big horror if it continues at this rate. For example, indoor air pollution, when you have biomass fuel cooking at home, it not only affects the person who's cooking, but also the children and the entire family. And growing up, children with the exposure in the lungs are maturing is not a good thing when you look at the consequences. The data is not good at all. I think this is well known to all of you who are studying this urban mobility and trying to make a difference. What I would try to point out is that Bangalore, which was supposed to be decent, is actually not decent. Maybe we're a little more lucky because we have moving air and the AQI falls because of that. But by and large, AQI, by the way, for those who may not know, is air quality index, which is the way these things are measured, and it's normally supposed to be less than 50 or 60, and look at the numbers in India and the four big metros. So we have a higher congestion level, and this mobility part is a major problem where we spend a lot of time in static traffic with idling engines and pollutants galore. So where we have so not only are we having a bad AQI, but we're spending more time. So this has got a multiplying effect, the full extent of which cannot be known, but is seen when disease is going more and more. To understand this AQI better, just a little more science, and please bear with me. This is the human hair over here. And the PM 2.5, which is the bad particle, particulate matter 2.5, which is 2.5 microns, which is the one which can go deep into the lungs and cause all sorts of problems, is this is the size compared to the human hair. And you can imagine this is there in large numbers. It comprises of a whole bunch of things and all the horrible diseases from COPD, asthma, cancer, and so many other respiratory infections, which have been galore at this point, is related to this particular entity. So this schematic says a lot. The non-communicable disease connection, I talked to the systemic spread of what enters the lung. Naively, you think it stays restricted to the lung, but we made a case that that's not the issue because of what's called spreading inflammation through the body. A lot of pollution deaths are related to the spread and added diabetes and dementia. And we are also the diabetes capital of the world at this point, in addition to some other diseases we talked about. We like this picture, and that's why I put a detail over there. Maybe it's a medical mind. This is how it works actually. It enters the lung and then it goes and plays havoc. So the body is a very intricate mechanism of interconnected pathways, and there, whether it's nerves, it's blood vessels, or it is other lymphatic pathways, all these things cause inflammation. These bad substances, which we can never see, imagine, or envisage, affect all the parts of our body, and these are working 24/7. The lungs, the blood vessels, the heart. And so when they are subject to insults, over time they start getting problems. We don't see that, and ultimately we then talk of the fact that more young are dying. Why is so much mortality coming? Why is healthcare for heart disease and diabetes so high? In this lies the secret of what we are going through, and a lot is known now, but a ton more needs to be done. What did we do when we started our center, Vayu? We basically said, let's collect our own data. So we looked at traffic policemen and a whole bunch of other populations. These two have been the major ones. And we said, these are high risk. Let us see what's happening to them. We are respiratory physicians. We are ICU guys. We can collect data to find out what's going on. We called it the STEM project. And over here, we found interesting but horrific numbers in the 3,200 plus traffic police and BMTC employees. And of course, we're doing construction workers now with a total 10K. Turns out that 28%, and now it's going to 33 with some new technology in the traffic police, and an equal number in the bus guys as with have lung impairment. So if we actually start doing a cohort, and we're very interested in doing that with all the challenges that it presents, then can we create a cohort of people who are followed for 5 years with exquisite data and testing, which is a huge thing to do by itself, and actually define the impact. And a lesser level will be happening to you and me as we walk the streets of the cities we exist in. Not to mention the fact that the NCD component came out very strongly, as is evident in the numbers mentioned below. What does the future hold if we don't act? Well, it's a huge problem right now. I was told to reflect in this, and I think it's intuitive and also needs to be, highlighted. Rising illness, healthcare utilization, and this is the mantra. The West loves this term, and this is actually going to break us if we continue. Productivity will fall. Society impact is what we are tremendously concerned about, and we never think of the fact that growing children who are our future. India is India because of its young and productive population is what is going to be at risk. If you take gig workers and put so many of them because you and I want a food at home and they're going through these environments, we certainly have our problems cut out for us. The West has studied all this, but they are in a much better situation to protect it. I don't know if I have a minute and this will play. This is Geeta Gopinath. Can you guys hear this?
Don't talk about when you're talking about business.
Can you hear the video?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, let me
yes.
play it for a second. Let's see what she said. It was fascinating to listen to it.
Point out, which we usually don't talk about when you're talking about business development, is I want to talk about pollution. Pollution is a challenge in India. And if you look at the impact of pollution on the Indian economy, it is far more consequential than any impact of any tariffs that have been put on India so far. If you look at the annual cost to India's GDP of the level of pollution that you have, and it's not just the effect on economic activity, but it's also the loss in lives. I mean, the numbers are really large based on a World Bank study that was done, I think it was published in 22. About 1.7 million lives are lost every year in India because of pollution. That's 18% of the deaths in India. I think even from any international investor's perspective who's thinking of coming in and putting up a shop in India, if you have to live there and you have the environment is not of the kind that you feel that, okay, this is going to be consequential for your health, it holds you back. And obviously, not to say, but all the Indians that are living in this kind of pollution. So
you guys could get the gist of what's going on. It was this was Davos earlier in the year. So by and large, we can see the hit to us, massive numbers, billions over there. I don't need to run through this. And of course, loss of life and loss of years and loss of quality of life is a major part of what we're going through right now. Children pay the price for it. Young workers affected have dwelt on that. Elderly anywhere at a problem because of limited reserves right now. Healthcare costs we dwelt on, and tourism will obviously come down if you sit and have environments like Delhi and so on. So to conclude, we survived pandemics. You started the discussion with COVID. It was a horror. Wars, unfortunately, a part of modern life, but pollution is killing us silently effectively, and it looks like we're not doing much. In an era of AI, where we sit and hold meetings on how life can change, we basically are unable to dwell on effectively on the air we breathe, and that is the crisis we are not addressing effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. That was really, really helpful. Thank you. I have two immediate questions, if you will allow me, for a
Sure.
couple of minutes. Two follow-up questions. 20% of at least Delhi's air pollution, after having done the source studies, even if they're a little old, are because of transport. And I suspect that if we do source studies in other places, it will not be very different. So I have two follow-up then questions for you. One is your broad reaction to a Delhi policy as we have it today. And second, based on where you sit, I haven't seen, and I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. I've not seen the medical community get involved in these policy making discussions, at least in the last few years. I'd love to hear your point of view on that. Is there such a forum? Are other states doing it? Both.
See, truthfully, I'm not very savvy with the policy. As you said, we are not involved. And secondly, we're sitting here in Bangalore. So the policy, to what extent it's effective, how many, I know they must be having some doctors. There's always an AIMS doctor over there. Dr. Guleria used to be part of this, and there's Dr. Kildani. He talks of being on the boards and so on. But inputs to the point of effectivity and execution are not very great at this point. That's very evident. The second thing is we've not generated enough local data, I feel. We have very few papers. If you look at the traffic police thing, there's only one paper before us, which has looked at a much smaller population. So we don't have point prevalence, we don't have longitudinal studies, nothing. And then at the end of the day, unless the medical community has a big voice, many individuals are doing it. There are many people who formed, forums against pollution, but to hit policy, make a difference, how your winter was. So this is where we stand.
I hope that many of you and your fraternity do get involved in policy making, certainly the EV policy making, that I go back to 20%. So, we have a very aggressive Delhi policy, even if it's draft as of today. Yes, Delhi is in a crisis situation, but your own data showed Bangalore in a bad place. So I do hope that, more of the medical community is in there, in any voice, in any activistic voice, in any medical voice. The data will come, but the urgency is probably faster than the data will show up. So thank you again. I know you have a hard stop, but if you're okay to stay, I'll perhaps move to Dr. Sharma from CAQM, who again is the why we're here doing what we're doing, certainly with EVs and Delhi, is the pollution situation. So Dr. Sharma, over to you. Firstly, thank you so much for taking the time. And over to you. I'd love to ask you your views on, I guess, where we are from with CAQM and all the measures of air pollution. The Delhi policy, at least for me, appears to be quite very ambitious, and I hope it stays like that. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mahua, and thanks. I think with this presentation that has been made by Dr. Ravinder Mehta, I think a lot of my job is at least taken care of, because again, I think, and I mentioned it, that, for us, it is the air pollution impact parameters which are more important rather than, the CO2 and CAFE issues that we were hearing from the MORTH perspective. And really good to see that the other thing that I liked about Dr. Ravinder's presentation is the exposure and vulnerability. Because I think a lot of time we do talk about air pollution, but then we don't look at vulnerability and exposure. And of course, he has brought out very clearly as to who is suffering, who's going to be impacted, and what is going to be the long-term impact of this. And that's where, CAQM comes in. So the first thing is that doctors on policy. In fact, our vehicle expert committee has two doctors on it. There's a lung doctor's lung care without harm or something. So Dr. Arvind and of course Dr. Guleria, both, in fact, Dr. Guleria is the co-chairperson of our committee with Professor Junjunwala, and we want to ensure that whatever recommendations come have the health and the exposure and vulnerability perspective there. So that's really important, and we are trying to bridge this gap in terms of medical and policy inputs into the work that we are doing in CAQM. And this is a standard part of our presentations across the internally within the government and outside also. Now, of course, on the EV policy, because that is what was something that was mentioned a lot. And I just wanted to mention that, number one, Delhi is a very desperate situation right now. I can see 298 even sitting in my office here. So 298 is the AQI today. And this is a fairly, we are not in winters, but you can see the impact that is happening. And this would be having continuous impact on children, people who are more vulnerable down the line. So for a setup like Delhi NCR and adjoining areas, what we are responsible for, I think the situation is desperate, and I would call it an emergency situation. And for us to actually go through the larger thinking that, we can have a diversified policy and we can have diversified fuels in the country, that is fine. But I think for Delhi NCR, I think we should be moving ahead with whatever best and cleaner technologies are available. And in that direction, I would say that the Delhi EV policy has finally, moved beyond just the incentives to mandates. In fact, a lot of these mandates, what I want to inform the audience today is that a lot of these mandates are actually coming from CAQM directions. And in fact, a lot of people think that, Delhi policy, what is going to happen in the core NCR areas, as well as what happens in the rest of NCR and perhaps adjoining areas. Now, our directions will actually be supporting for example, let's say the first mandate within the Delhi EV policy on electric three-wheelers will be specific to January 27. Now, of course, this will be in Delhi where it is already regulated, but then our direction will actually support this, rolling it out into the core NCR areas and then gradually in the rest of NCR and the adjoining area. So, but we will give some staggered time, let's say in terms of, 6 months for core Delhi NCR. We call it the heavy vehicle density districts in NCR, which is basically Gurgaon, Gurugram, Noida, etc. And then we move to the next part of the NCR. Then similarly for electric two-wheelers, April 2028, similarly, we will be moving same with directions on this. The other mandate in the Delhi EV policies on fleet aggregators. In fact, we have built up on the positive experience of the Delhi aggregator and delivery service providers and e-commerce providers platform and portal, and have already asked the NCR states to actually have their own aggregator policy, which they have done, but they also need to develop the portal, which will then be monitoring. So currently in Delhi, at least we can say that 7 lakh vehicles are on the fleet aggregators and delivery platform portal, and they are being monitored for cleaner fuels, which means transition to EV in that. Of course, another very refreshing part of the Delhi policy, which I think we discussed with Mahua earlier, is the buses. And there we have the CAQM direction on AITP buses and on restriction of buses. But we were feeling that a lot has been done on the state buses, but what has been left out is the private buses and the AITP buses. So this is specifically something the school buses have been picked up by the Delhi EV policy. And again, this will be extended to NCR, the rest of NCR and the wider areas by CAQM. So that is certainly something that we will do through our directions and mandate that. Again, for all government trucks, which is again a part of the whole Delhi policy to utilize vehicles for EV. Again, there we have direction. So again, on all these 4 critical mandates that you are seeing in the Delhi policy, they will be backed up by CAQM directions for Delhi NCR and the wider area. So I want to assure that this is already something. What we would be important to look at the Delhi policy is how the incentives play out. And I think for every of these segments, there have been incentives both for the uptake of the EV vehicle, plus an incentive for the scrapping of the vehicles, plus the investment that they've done on the infrastructure, which is the charging points, which is going to be critical and very important. And that is again, so wherever I think the Delhi policy is actually going to go ahead in terms of implementation, CAQM will be fully supporting that. Now, of course, just moving out of the Delhi policy, I would also like to mention the current work that is already happening on the end-of-life vehicles, where again you have seen the Delhi government announcing no fuel and no PUC. And this is based on the 500 ANPR stations that have already been put up on all fuel stations of Delhi. And similarly, they are being put up in fuel stations of NCR and rest of NCR areas, including the outer areas of Delhi. So currently you've got the Delhi 124 border entry points. Again, ANPR systems will be put up there to regulate vehicles that are paying ECC and toll. But CAQM is also coming up with a wider, we call it a low emission zone that will be in the core NCR area, where work is happening with the NHAI and MORT to look at ensuring that non-intentional or vehicles that are not intended to actually go through Delhi or the wider NCR are then restricted beyond Delhi. So this is something that is already being planned, and things are going ahead for us. Also need to mention in terms of the policy why one and the three-wheeler and two-wheeler are being targeted. Now, 71% of the vehicles in Delhi and of course in Delhi NCR, almost 70 to 80% of the vehicles are actually three-wheelers and two-wheelers. And it's important to ensure their transition. Also, with the incentives being issued and with the facilitation that is required for charging, this would help in better transition in these two segments, but that means that the other segments are also being looked at. Then, based on the latest emission factors that we have from ARI, what we have seen is that CNG autos and of course diesel we know already is highly polluting, but then just to let you know that CNG auto based on the current levels of pollution is almost about 130 times more polluting than the current option that we have in terms of the so it's not just the diesel three-wheeler, it's going to be the CNG. And again, I think that shift that needs to happen in terms of the flexi-fuel vehicles and the other vehicles, we also need to be conscious of the fact that, it is not just the PM 2.5, which was very well illustrated by Dr. Mehta. I think we are fighting another battle on NOx, and that is directly related to CNG. And NOx and ozone are also becoming high parameters in the summer season in the AQI values of this. So at least on the vehicle side, the transport side, I would say, this is one sector where we have got the emission factors for each vehicle based on the ARI emission inventory that is currently happening. And that will allow us to actually count the actual emissions that we are going to curb by having the zero tailpipe emissions, which is the EV emissions. Currently, of course, hydrogen may come in later, but the transition to EV for Delhi is something that is direly required because of the very fact that what was presented by Dr. Mehta on the impact of AQI and the exposure and vulnerability levels means it's a crisis situation. So we don't have the luxury of looking at the other options. And I think the faster we accelerate, that will be good in this area. So I'll stop there, but if there are any specific questions, then I can come back on this.
No, thank you for that. Again, thank you so much. I have plenty of questions. I'll wait for later. Let me just move over in the interest of time to Achal. I know she also has to leave. Achal, over to you. You're probably the largest now EV bus maker in the country. I know you and I have spoken about one category of buses on kids and school buses, but overall, I'd love to get your views on the policy, on everything, the charging, the bus portion, the school bus, all of it.
So I think, Mawa, I will focus largely, given in the paucity of time, on the school bus, which is, a more relevant discussion in terms of what we've been discussing today. And more so because, we've recently seen a policy shift in which the school buses in Delhi are mandated to go electric in a phased manner over the next couple of years. I think we have to start with the solution on why electric buses, as has been discussed, worked really well. The electric buses really worked really well because, while we want to solve for pollution, you cannot solve for a pollution without economics working out. Anything that's trying to solve for a bigger good has to also solve for money, right? And the reason electric buses, especially the ones that we've seen being applied for a DTC or all other STUs have been because these buses tend to run 200 kilometers every day. They run for 365 days a year and they run for 12 years. Therefore, the higher cost of ownership is spread over a 12-year period, and a person typically achieves, whoever operates a school bus, whoever operates a public bus, the break even is achieved roughly in the third or the fourth year. So there's positive cash flow accruing to it. Now, when you're going to move to a school bus, the problem is entirely different. Instead of running the 200 kilometers every day, you are running what? A 60, maximum 100 kilometers every day. Kids don't really come for very, very far to their schools, right? Instead of running for 365 days a year, I think school days are what, 210, 240 days. And instead of running for 12 years, barely people run school buses beyond an 8-year life cycle. So the total cost of ownership that worked so beautifully for an STU bus or a public bus doesn't translate one-on-one for a school bus, because the upfront cost, when in trying to solve for the economics differently, one would expect the school bus cost to come down dramatically so that the break even is again achieved in that third, fourth year, and so on. Because school bus tend to operate less, you will have lesser batteries, and that can bring the cost down. But the cost is not falling down to the extent for the economics to work out. Therefore, unless we solve for that cost problem, where the capex that we are incurring on school bus is lower enough for the economics to work out and the savings that we have by using electric as a fuel rather than diesel as a fuel, making school buses popular is going to be an extremely difficult task. The math we are looking at is electric buses, say even a 9-meter, are generally 80, 90 lakhs. Diesel buses, CNG buses, say are 30, 40 lakhs. Now, the break even we have internally evaluated in our model for school buses to actually work, and you and I have discussed, is roughly somewhere between 50, 55 lakhs. So for policy to really pick up and become popular, we'll have to make sure we are able to achieve that price point. Now, we at PMI have worked extensively over the last 2 years to solve for this problem. And, we are very proud of the fact that we have 3 registered school buses in the country, which are electric as of today. which might seem like a small fiat, but it's really a big silly problem solved for us. But having said that, these were kind of people who were more adventurous, more sort of risk taking, more ready to take the plunge. But for it to become, come to the adoption, we are talking about 30-40%. It'll require some serious effort. It'll require some serious understanding. So there's one on that cost element. Second is the charging infra. Now, again, one problem that the public transport solved beautifully was, again, getting us that dedicated depots with dedicated electricity connections. Now, if you will have school buses going across the city, we will have to solve for charging. Where will they get charged? Where do they get charged overnight? Do they get charged during the day? And so on. I don't think we have a solution set available that completely. In one of the few schools we've had conversations, we've recommended, why don't you put the charging spaces inside the school? They don't feel comfortable because of XYZ risks and so on. So that's another problem that's going to be needed to solve for. The third thing is that electric buses require slightly more maintenance than your traditional diesel CNG buses, which could have been, you know, um, just maintained at a local garage or something like that. That's another solution set with the charging infra that will need to be solved for. But for me, those solutions sort of go hand in hand. But the biggest solution I think we need to solve for is a change in mindset. In India, the asset ownership is a big thing, right? A transporter really takes pride in boosting about how many of the buses or vehicles that they own are EMI less or bank free loan or are in their actual ownership. It's a matter of pride. In electric buses, since the capex is higher and the total cost of ownership improves over a period of time, you are generally not very EMI less, or quickly the loans don't fall away. So that coupled, with an active after second hand market working, we will, I feel, not be very successful in pushing it all through unless we have bigger incentives that are available. So, again, from my understanding, and we've had a lot of conversations, we still need, I think, that extra push for people to get on the other side of the fence, maybe a subsidy or like a small, maybe a 5-10 lakh and so on, for this movement to actually take off and go a long way. Otherwise, the challenges we are talking about, unless those are solved for, I don't know how long we'll go.
Achal, quick follow-up question. This version of the policy has that target, as you said. You don't think that will move mindset issues beyond school and operator? Or is it too
So, see,
far, or it's too mild?
I think it's a good target. It's 30% over the next 3-4 years. But again, a policy will push people. It is mandated. You have to do it. But unless we solve for these other things, how do you push someone to do something?
Which is a bigger mindset problem, the school or the operator?
Schools rarely operate the buses. It's generally the operator who operates the buses. The way it'll work out is, okay, the operator will ask for an increase in the cost. The school will say, okay, school can say two things. Either I don't increase the cost or I pass it on to the children or the families. So unless we are sure the economics will work out, somebody will bear that burden of the additional cost that's coming. Because if people still want their 4-5 year loans, or smaller loan tenures and stuff like that, or if financing is not solved for, then
Yeah,
there will be some additional cost that will come through.
yeah. So
And
target
ultimately,
together with the business model.
it will be passed on to the final customer.
Yeah, and that's a problem. Let me again, thank you for that, Anjal. Let's just keep moving again, just to keep things on track. I'm going to move quickly to Shravan and ask you, Shravan, to sort of jog your memory to when you were policy version 1. And we're now in 2.x because there have been some corrections in between. What's your take on where we are with this policy? What is the expectation? And third, with regard to, given that Delhi was always a leader, is this enough of a jump in the policy?
Yep. Thank you, Mova. So, I'll start off just quoting and just what I saw from Dr. Sharma's and Dr. Mehta's talk. I mean, look, we are losing out on 8 years of life in Delhi, as that's what AQLI data says. If we compare it to WHO standards, if we compare it to national standards, we're still losing out on 5 years. Now, having said that, and all the other parameters that Dr. Mehta went through, and Dr. Sharma also told us that the transport sector itself has roughly about 1/4 of pollution in Delhi right now, and primary of those sources is two-wheelers and three-wheelers, which goes as high as 80 to 90%. It's no more. I don't think we have a choice anymore. It's like we can safely say it's a public health emergency. About time that we sort of acknowledge it as well. But from the first policy, which was more about say incentives, promotion of different vehicle segments, trying out different ways to get rapid adoption in place, this sort of sets it in stone by saying that, hey, this is 2027 or 2028 is when we electrify our complete fleet. Now, there are a few moving pieces here and there that I feel could have been a little better. And I'm sure you must remember from your time at CSL when we tried to do auto financing for electric auto rickshaws. We did that with you, Palash, and a couple of other folks from your team. Now, uh, incentives aside, mandates aside, everything is like all these things are something that we really need now. Can't push it any further, but financing or bringing down that cost of financing is priority. Reason being that if you see the policy is also structured in a way which targets the mass segments, which is two-wheelers and three-wheelers now. But again, if I go back to the three-wheeler segment and we attempted to do something with financing, then the delta between what a formalized financier or a bank would give was as high as 25% as an interest rate. And if you compare it to an informal financer who a large majority of these three-wheeler drivers go to, was as low as roughly about 11 or 12%. So the delta is also huge. And that same thing also applies to CNG auto rickshaws, where we see that financing is available at cheaper rates. Now, again, like Anshul also mentioned it, that it needs to be thought of in a holistic manner, not just bringing down the cost of the vehicle, but how is it being done operationally on a day-to-day basis. So one point that and Delhi already has those learnings in place. It's not that Delhi has to try something new. The inter-subvention scheme was, I guess, one of the first ones in the country to be implemented at such a scale. We just need to go back, get those learnings in place, and maybe have them in the picture. Second, this time, like Dr. Sharma also mentioned about aggregators and why is it important for them to electrify? I mean, we all of us know that they are the lowest hanging fruit, or even for that matter, government fleet electrification. Now we have definitive timelines as well in place. And this is something that is building upon what Delhi has already done. So yeah, I mean, couple of quick thoughts on that. And third point that I feel not a lot of people have spoken about is that the first policy spoke in depth about EV skilling and workforce skilling, which is again not a part of this policy anymore. But it's just about building on top of what has already been done and achieved under the first policy. There's one more conversation that is flying around right now, which is on charging infrastructure and the right to charge, because Delhi did try its hand with incentives on charging infra. There were 6,000 rupees that was given for the first 30,000 chargers, but say problems from RWAs or other associations did create a stumbling block. Now the conversation has matured to a level where we're saying that chargers are important, but the right to charge is all the more important. So something along these lines that second policy could do a little better or build upon what has already been done in the first one.
Thank you. Just one quick question back to you. Given that you were privy to the first policy and its formation, I want to pick up on something that Anchal said, that, as far as buses are concerned, you can, of course, and I understand this, you can move a policy and make it a policy thing only when the economics work.
Right.
And I would have expected her as an OEM to be quite excited about this 30% target for schools. It's a very large segment.
Yes.
And they're one of the first few companies to have produced a school bus. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what part of the policy could perhaps contain a business model that enables the 30% to work. So while the 30% or the 20% that's there is great because it levels the playing field, is Delhi
Right.
at a point now, and I'll ask you this because you were in the inside as we were at that time, is there space to also reflect a more sophisticated business model to get there? Or is the thinking that this 30% is good enough for now and people will comply?
I mean, just quick thoughts, and I'm sure Ansel and you would have a much better understanding of the sector than I do right now. But if and this is again just me going back to my conversations whenever I had one with the industry, like for schools, like you had said that Anshul had mentioned this, that charging in their own premises is something that schools are apprehensive about, and this is an active conversation as well. Like during my stint with the department at that time, that is there a possibility to make this school bus model viable if you open up our depot charges during the day for schools? Because that would also solve, uh, say, for example, space constraints for them. We already have heavy duty chargers there. Buses usually, and it's easier for them then to
Or you
comply with
mandate
these
it.
standards.
Or you
Yeah.
mandate it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let me move to Danish. As an OEM, Danish, there's a lot in it in the policy for OEMs. And in my years of watching this policy development and being in it from the early days, the first port of call normally are the OEMs. Make sure that there is something in the market to be deployed. Make sure that when you're pushing the boundaries, OEMs can in fact receive the bit of that push. So I'd love to hear your views on the policy and where you are as a company.
So thank you so much. As an OEM, Montra Electric, we see the lot of buzz by this policy. But if you ask me, really, it is going to work. So we have to unlock many things. So what Achal madam has said in their view, so that is the one thing we have to unlock the finance. Till the time we are not unlocking the finance, so everything, because somebody is an operator who is into the business to earn some money, to make some money, and to contribute into the economy. So till the time we are not making it's a comparative. So what are the challenges by adapting the EV or electrification into the mobility? So first is in a finance. So something finance, how it is directly related, because these are the operators who make out their balance sheet, their books, like in a way they can procure some ICE vehicle. But what is the price in a EV? It's almost three times. So it is not about the only the asset cost. So the number one, the asset cost is in a three times. So first difference is coming with the down payment. So the equity contribution. So maybe percentage remain the same, but the amount which is going from the operator pocket, that is again almost as a three time. So our operator is ready to contribute that much of amount. That is the biggest problem. They are not meant that there is a mindset will come. So mentally or mindset is not prepared in that direction. Second thing, you have to unlock the finance for their working capital requirement, their charging requirement also. Because if you see in a traditional ICE, they have a complete ecosystem. They have a tie-up with the fuel pumps. They have certain line of credits which they use. But if you want to enter into the electrification of, and if especially I am talking about the tracking, so initially some 3-4 months working capital you have to put by your own pocket. One, you have to put your additional down payment, which is three times your equity as compared to the ICE tracking. Again, you have to put some 3-4 you have to keep 3-4 months working capital, because here you have to initially invest on the charging infra. Then putting in the charging infrastructure is we have to think on that direction also, because we have to unlock, because there is a transformer, there is a discom connection, and it is a time taking process. It is not something which is plug and play facilities available till now. So most of the operations, so some of the operation you have in a public charging infra, where if you'll go that your charging cost, there's a lot of difference between by putting captive charger and charging infra. Then the electricity rate for this charging policy, these are also in a very dynamic. So suppose you are going with the CPO, your cost would be in a 2x. You are putting your own charging network, your cost would be in a half of what you are going with the CPO. And the third thing, which is very very important, if you want to still you are able to solve these problems, then there is the bankers problem, because these finance institute always having the mindset they are taking an exposure for the mobility side. So they have some certain policy, and with that policy they can go in a certain exposure. So suppose I have to buy the 100 trucks in an ice truck, that would require in a different set of exposure. That exposure I can consume with 20 electric truck only. So that's going to be the biggest bottleneck, because every businessman want to keep free his credit line. He want to utilize his credit line in a proper manner. So now banker has to also change the mindset. Finance institute also has to change the mindset, and they have to come, and they have to come in a way where they can accommodate this technology, because there is a price is high, operating cost is less, so that EMI combination can be settled down. But what is the biggest problem? Biggest problem to entering into this electrification. So that finance unlocking is the first thing, and which is very much required for, especially in a buses and truck side. So this is my point of view on this.
What would you do differently on this policy? Is it enough?
Is it not enough? That's why I come unlocking of the finance, because this policy will create a buzz, this will facilitate, and this will work as a catalyst to operate to come to the OEM and find out the probable application, probable routes where he can come with the electrification. But the biggest bottleneck which I discussed, that is enough finance. So somehow you have to come with a longer tenure finance. That is point number one. The green fund, climate fund. Generally, there is a perception in a people mindset that should be in a low cost of funds, which is available, but the funds are not directly coming to the operators. So there are the agency which is involved. So if it is lent to the operator, it is costing higher than what traditional cost of funding he has available. He has an available of credit lines. So if you talk about 8-9% is a normal traditional trucking finance rate currently going in a market. So in this rate, even green fund is not available for the operators. Then that higher exposure. So now we are going with the different banks. We are asking them so leasing is one option where we can increase the tenure. Then we are requesting to the bankers at least you start enhancing the tenure for these customers. And then financial restructuring on a different modality we are working with the finances. So these are the way which we are looking, but we require them some strong push on that side, where that project based funding can be available for the longer tenure, or that green fund if directly available to the these operators. So that will help a lot, and that will expedite the electrification. This is my understanding.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Danesh. Let me pass it back to Pawan to take over, but also start by just commenting vis-a-vis from a larger context this Delhi policy and what your expectations are, and then I'll ask you to take over the floor, and perhaps you can open it up for questions after that.
Mahua, should we get questions? Because see, one thing is,
yeah.
why don't we look at the questions? Only I'll just give a 30-second comment is I think we need leaders like Virender ji and the push from people like Ravindra Mehta and then everyone here, Dhanesh and Shravan and Aanchal and Mahua, you, of course, yourself who have driven this whole e-bus change in India and what we are seeing now. I think in terms of the policy itself, I would say it's progressive. It's definitely a big shift in the way India is thinking. And I think for the first time, we are seeing this whole conversation of mandates and, phasing out of some of this for two-wheelers and three-wheelers in 27 and 28. So I think that's a big sea change. We need really policies like that because when we are looking at from a systems view of what is happening in the system, right? It's not just about um, the different tension points, recognizing that one, you have the job creation through auto industry, the manufacturing positioning of India. We also have the health crisis of seeing. So there are this different, it's like a complex, I would say a polygon, which way is trying to balance. And this is what the policy is also trying to do. So I hope that this is not just limited to Delhi, but eventually, with Virendraji and others being there, that it can be expanded to the whole NCR itself, because we don't want that people then go and start purchasing vehicles outside the Delhi region and then start bringing that here, right? So I think we really need to think of systems functioning as a way to really enable this change. We are on right track, and hopefully, other day I was talking in Bangalore also and in Karnataka, and they were also looking at how do we really bring some of these progressive policies across pan India, and probably this is the 3.0 version of the whole state policy revisions that we should really looking it should look state after state. Um, so I think it's time for being bold, time for also taking some progressive steps. But Mahua, back to you for questions, and there are some 9 questions in the chat. Do you
Thanks.
want me
Yeah.
to read it out?
Yes, please, because I can only see some
Yeah.
chat.
So this is for any of the panelists. Nikunj is asking that what is the policy for EV tractor? Because we in this area at least multiple. So any policy for EV tractor in city areas? Any thoughts, anyone around that?
Hard
Virender
to, I
ji or
mean, anyone to comment, but I think, Pavan, we don't have too many tractors in Delhi. So I
correct.
can't comment on that. This I know has come. One of the other questions that's come to me is what about heavy duty trucking? And this is a city policy. So perhaps for that reason, there's there are no
So
tractors.
let me bring a city policy question. Subir is asking, and I think Mawa, this will be very interesting for you. An observation with new Delhi EV policy is that schools will get a reason to pass on a big burden to school parents, even if the government gives subsidies. How can this be addressed? Do you want to come in on the school buses electrification?
So the previous version of the policy had considered it was not published, but I was privy to it from having been inside. And actually, Dr. Sharma can also come in. Had a financial incentive given to a bus, given to an OEM. This avatar or this version now has a target. And from everything, my view is that while the subsidy was of course very helpful, there's of course a risk that it would create winners and losers as far as OEMs are concerned. Some people would hit the mark, the benchmark price that we all know roughly is transport services, whereas others won't. A good thing that a target always does, or a cap or mandate always does, is that it levels the playing field. It provided schools adhere to it, OEMs will compete, financing will compete, competition will come up, and then that always results in lower prices. But I can't comment beyond that. I know I might even ask Dr. Sharma to comment on that piece.
Yeah, Dr. Sharma,
So,
please.
Yes, so I'll come in because I think I just need to sort of respond on some of the other questions. One is tractors, heavy duty trucking, construction vehicles, refrigerated vehicles. Now, of course, just to let you know that, Delhi NCR, you are seeing one part of it, which is this policy. But along with this, there is another two things that are happening. One is the overall allocation of about 1,200 trucks, e-trucks for Delhi. This is under the MORTH scheme. Secondly, MORTH and Niti Aayog are also working on Naya Safar Yojana, which is going to address the buses and trucks, especially the private buses and trucks. Now, currently, this policy, is actually going to have incentives, both scrapping incentives for vehicles that are BS4, of course, BS1, 2, and 3, BS4, and moving those vehicles into BS6, the cleaner version. And that will also have incentives, a subvention scheme, and the OEM component there, which will allow a bigger transition in Delhi NCR, mainly on the N1, N2, N3, and of course the medium passenger vehicle and the heavy passenger vehicle, both the buses outside. So for both the buses and trucks, this is going to compensate or go alongside the Delhi policy, which will of course have for Delhi, N1 will be purely EV, but for NCR and core NCR and rest of NCR, it will be staggered into BS6, CNG, or other vehicles, where, of course, the EV vehicles are comparatively not available for private sector. Now, in this, construction vehicles and tractors. Now, tractors, of course, they are still covered under the TREM by this, and directly all the procurement that is being done by municipal corporations of Delhi and NCR will actually be pushed to have only equipment or construction vehicles which are EV vehicles wherever they are available. So that push is also simultaneously going on. Tractors, of course, we can leave out at the moment because there is a larger issue as far as tractors are concerned with the TREM, the standards still being negotiated with the MORTH. And once those standards are done, then you can also look at, though there is a trial for e-tractors happening, but still there is a lot more to be done. And of course, I'll also raise a very fundamental issue here, that currently our PUC system, and I don't have the MORTH representative now, because currently our PUC system is not addressing the PM 2.5 NOx and other challenges that we are seeing. And time and again, I think we are emphasizing that unless the PUC system starts to address or starts to even point out the heavy impact that vehicles are having on PM 2.5 NOx and other parameters, it's going to be really difficult. There has been some improvement by MORTH on the PUC 2.0, but we are still not there. And this is one area where MORTH, in addition to this diversification of fuels, I think they need to seriously look at the PUC issue, because this is hampering a lot of work, both on the BS standards as well as on the on-road vehicles. And this really critically needs to be addressed. So I'll stop there. So I think this also answers someone who was asking, that we are only going to address 30% of this, because we don't have an EV for four vehicles. I think four-wheeler vehicles. Now you have to look at these three schemes together, because that's actually going to help in terms of the larger transition in Delhi NCR. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Virendraji. Yeah, Mahua, please go on.
No, all well. Oh, thank you. I was going to pass it back to you, Pawan, to just field the questions. And I think so maybe we can take.
So I'll just take last 2 questions. Like Charit is asking that if the upfront cost of EVs is a major deterrent, why is battery as a service not picking up in commercial vehicle segment? And I think I also saw a little bit more high-level macro economic level question that government is open to keep all doors for all possible technologies. I think which even Kunal Joshi touched upon, right? Should India adopt a long-term strategy for its road transport, considering the diversity in vehicle form factors? Yeah, otherwise it's so I think that's the direction anyway. So I'll combine this question with FAME was an incentive scheme launched for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers, but we haven't had an incentive scheme for four-wheelers, is it? I thought four-wheelers also there to ensure price attractiveness with ICE.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was, as FAME to there was incentives for cars, isn't it, Mama?
Yes, there was, and even the Delhi policy has one.
Yeah. And our mobility system is designed as per old Western standards to be innovative e-mobility as per Indian challenges. Conditions require policy level big collaboration. Yes, this is exactly the whole intention of this webinar. Also, people like Mahua and bringing CA, QMS and pulmonologists and others as part of manufacturers is exactly creating this collaborative platform to really see how to work together. You want to touch upon this BAS, Mahua, on battery
Maybe
as a
best to
service?
ask Danish. Let's ask the OEM in
Danish?
the room for why
Yeah.
has
Yes.
that taken off.
So battery as a service is a good concept. As a concept, it is available, but what is required for it again, like if you go with the CNG story in a Delhi. So what is happening? Why CNG is not so successful in Mumbai? Why it is successful in Delhi? So there is a big difference. So it's a JV of Delhi government, and what Delhi government is provide the land bank to putting the CNG stations. So in the same way, so and a battery swapping also. So the infrastructure requirement, infrastructure availability, and apart of that, there should be a uniformity because uniformity in a that swapping can be done because if one OEM will start this, so that adaptability would be very slow. But there is a government will come with a uniformity in a battery where any battery can be swappable with any of the trucks, so that can, and again I am coming on a point, so it is not going to solve the finance problem because your finance will get distributed between battery energy and trucks. So whatever rental you will have in a battery and your energy cost, if you combine with the EMI, so it will have the same reflection. Only it is going to solve that initial capex. But as a financier, it is the biggest challenge because that in a current mindset, financiers are not ready because as per them, there's a secondary market nobody can anticipate till now because we have to see the complete one life cycle, and apart of that that complete life cycle, and they are not ready with the program. So without battery, how they can provide the financing on these trucks and all. So that's a mindset we have to upgrade with the finances. We have to develop the program with financing the asset without battery pack. So these are the still challenges still remain. So something uniformity has to come. That program has to be settled from the policy level, and then that can be executed in a field.
Thank you so much, Danish. Any last comments, Mahua? Otherwise, I'll just close the session.
No, I think that's great, Pavan. Thank you for doing this. Danish, there's one thing I would say. Do give your comments into the Delhi policy when you can. To whatever extent I know the formation of this policy, the comment period is taken very seriously and comments are reviewed and they considered. The government's very open and progressively looking at these things. So please give your comments in and try and give it in on behalf of previous life. Try and give it in a format
Yeah,
that
please,
serves
please.
public policy.
We'll do that. We'll do that. Certainly, we'll do that. We are here to develop the complete ecosystem to
Yeah,
remove
because
these
it
all
needs
carbon
everybody to
footprints.
act. So
Yeah,
please, you must give your feedback in there.
yeah.
On that note, I'll just take 10 seconds to thank everyone for coming for this. I'm very grateful that we had a doctor in the discussion today, and I hope that more such doctors are coming, more such of that fraternities coming in. I'm very aware of the financing challenges out here, but we have a policy and we have a very active administration that is pushing it. So on that note, I'll just say thank you, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Pavan.
you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.